How should I go back?
I'll just lead into it again. So I was just talking earlier before that in terms of energy, I've been quite low on energy for a while, and would call it a low grade. What do I call it? Low grade energy, low fatigue, chronic fatigue thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Agne kindly took me through a process that she had received or had been downloaded. So, and after that, my energy started to come up to more natural sort of, not overactive, but certainly not normal sort of energy, which is great. And it's continued to do so. So for Maria and others who are not here's benefit, Agne might like to share with us something about that. So Agne, back to you.
So this is a bit beyond NLP, right? And through quantum healing, I was able to access some channeling abilities, if I could call that this way. So I received the download of Healthy Body Blueprint, and it basically activates that healthy DNA structure that, like, without us being affected by all the medication, vaccination, foods, GMOs, and all the toxins that we have been exposed through many years at the moment. So it's basically activating that healthy body blueprint in your system helps you to connect to activate those DNA aspects that are not active, or I don't know, somehow covered or whatever. I don't know how to put it well, but yeah. So I did this process with several clients, and they noticed different results, but whatever was important for them shifted in their health. And like Dick is saying, for him was more like receiving more energy. So yeah, that is one of those things that is hard to put in words, and not like so much detailed NLP, but yeah, this powerful process. Yes.
Yeah, but at an NLP technical level, it's still about changing the submodalities, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
In a kinesthetic sense, the energy is more energy compared to less energy. So yeah, I was also. I just want to mention also, for those who are not here tonight, that Christine had to cancel at last moment because of some incident at her home. So she'll be catching up with this and doing whatever leading she was going to be doing next time. Whether it'll still be about low energy or something different, we'll no doubt find out in due course. So that's great. Okay, so any thoughts about what Agne just shared there, Maria, or energy generally from you?
Do you want me to describe the process, or?
Yeah, that'd be good. Well, I know the process. Maria, would you like that?
Mm-hmm. And it's similar to Maria already knows about the timeline work, going to the past and the future and coming back to now. So I usually invite the client to notice the time or the age of themselves when the health issues started or something like that, if it's a specific issue. So we're going back into that moment, and then connecting through chords, I kind of deliver that healthy body blueprint. I thought of it that I could just, again, give it as a flash drive in that realm. So without that connection directly, is also possible. But like receiving that object then, and integrating into their system, as going through the timelines towards the present moment, through all the situations and past experiences where they needed that healthy body blueprint for it to be integrated. Again, connecting with the resources and helping that energy to integrate. Then I invite them to go to the future timeline where the healthy body blueprint is fully integrated in their system. And see that future self, how they look, how they feel. Usually they describe all the qualities that were missing for them, or they wish to have. And then I asked if that future self is holding some kind of object representing that healing or healthy body blueprint with all the resources, with all the belief updates and whatever is connected to that energy. And every single time they realize there is some object different for everybody, but then they take that object and then in the present moment they place it wherever feels right in their body or in the personal space. And then I invite that, let's say it was like white light ball, and they place it in the heart, and I invite that to integrate into their physiology, like every cell, organs, tissues, chakra system, resources connecting to that as well. So integrating fully. And then I invite that energy of the white ball to flow through the past, again healing all the past and the future, so it will be always available and accessible. So that's the steps.
It's funny because I think we're going to go back to a conversation that we had at some point, which is very much, it's similar to something that I do, is just that I usually send people straight to the future where they have already healed. And it's very similar, funny enough, because it's just that in your case, they go twice into the past. In my case, they go twice into the future. The first time to get what they need, and the second time to prepare the future timeline for everything to go smoothly as they move forward. So it's interesting because that was something that also fell from someplace.
The download of some sort, yeah.
Yeah, it was also an apple that I collected. But it's interesting, yes.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, how timelines are a critical tool, for want of a better word, or construct. Even though all time is now in a big universal sense, and for this physiology, we have had past experience, we're going to have future experience, so we live in a time type of setup in physiology. And how the future has resources available to us already.
But it's interesting because if we think in terms of quantum physics does say that everything is simultaneously past, present, future, right?
That's right.
So at the end of the day, and quantum physics also says that if you can, even if you can change the future, you can actually change your past. Funny enough, and vice versa. So it's interesting in that way, right? Because I do believe that the work that we do in quantum healing with the timelines, it's actually very much, and also the way that we invite people to actually arrange the timelines. At the end of the day, everything is accessible from the present moment, right?
Yeah.
Which also makes sense in terms of quantum physics, in my opinion. So, and I do believe that, people get extremely good results because of that.
Yeah.
So I do think it's actually quite effective the way it works. And yes.
When you do, I asked Agne this before, and I'll ask you now. When you do this type of work with clients, have they been through the quantum one realignment first, self-alignment first?
Me, when I do that, yes.
For Agne, yes. What about you, Maria?
Not necessarily, no. I've had people who I took through that hadn't done the QH1, and yet it worked. So it's actually quite interesting, and it can be minute things because I don't just use it for health issues, although I've done that as well. But for example, I remember once that it was actually a student of mine who was having one of these situations where she wanted to set up her business, but there was a little bit of a confusion in her head as to what to do and how to do it and so on and so forth. And I used exactly the same process where I invited her to go to the future where the business was already open and she was already in the space and so on and so forth. And it's very nice. And now recently, and it was one session, and recently she opened the space. And when I asked her, so is it open now? And she said, yes, I've already opened. It's actually looking very nice. And she sent me a picture. And then I asked, does it look anything like what you had seen? And she said, yes, exactly the same way. So it's exactly the same way. So it was really, really interesting. So it can be anything, really. But yes, sometimes I've taken people through it that haven't done anything else.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the same. I take people through, because we as practitioners and facilitators of the quantum process, quantum healing process, we have access to all that information about timelines, about resources, and about belief updates that we can blend into any of the work in any particular way at any time. And I guess I'm coming to a much clearer understanding myself of the quantum healing self-alignment is really for people who want to go through a personal transformation journey as a first step for a bigger journey, whereas the tools and skills and attitudes and process can be used for individual particular concerns or particular things they wish to address, whether it's a physical condition or perhaps maybe a bit of mental chaos or emotional process. They may not be ready to or wanting to go on a much bigger personal transformational process. But I think for those who have been through the Quantum One self-alignment process, it may work a bit more easily, but I'm not sure if you've done both or not, Maria, whether you can compare that or not.
To be very honest, I'm actually thinking here, like the person that immediately comes to mind is probably my sister, right? Who's doing extremely well, who, despite everything she went through in the 6 months where she did 2 rounds of chemo, and already she's done with the radiotherapy as well, which were 23 sessions and so on and so forth. She was fine. I mean, there was no nausea. There were, so let alone, the throwing up that usually comes with the nausea. She didn't have anything like that. I actually think I felt nauseous once and she didn't.
Maybe you processed it for her.
Yeah, but that's what you told me. That's what you told me. And it was exactly after a session that I was doing with her that I came to the end and I was feeling completely nauseous and dizzy. And then you actually told me. And then so I was careful to clear the energy and so on. So it went away. Actually, it was funny. It was not just the clearing. It was more like I felt I used the metaphor and I worked with the metaphor. And so everything came to a halt after that. And from then on, I was a little bit more careful. I would normally shield myself before start working, but I also didn't do it every time. I did it once so that whenever I would be working with her, I would be shielded.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And she actually went through it, not a lot of side effects. The only thing that she had was, yes, she was a little bit foggy in terms of thinking, right? Sometimes she couldn't really put 2 and 2 together because, I mean, there were just too many chemicals inside her. And then there was also some numbness in her fingers and a little bit of swallowing in her legs. But other than that, nothing. Okay, fine. She lost her hair and her eyebrows and her eyelashes. She did, but still, other than that, you wouldn't say that she was going through what she was going through. And I had a chance to to talk to someone that I know that went very much through the same process. And the way she told me that she had felt through the process, nothing to do with it. And then she herself, and that's when I think that she understood what the sessions did for her. She talked to a friend of her that also went through the chemo, breast cancer and chemo. And what she told her in terms of side effects and so on and so forth, again, was quite severe. So she had serious trouble with side effects for the whole process. And that's when I think she actually understood how effective the process had been. So that's for me, that's the person that comes to mind. If she could go through what she went through the way she did, which was, always independent driving, she didn't stop driving, nothing, so yeah, she lost her hair, she lost her eyebrows, but compared to what could have been, so in that case, yes, I think it was very, very deep. And it was, I started with, like you had suggested, I started by doing something where her body would start to heal even before I would take her through QH1. Then I took her through QH1, and then we did many other things as were coming up. And as we were shifting from one round of chemo to the next round of chemo, which came with different side effects, and then to radiotherapy and so on and so forth. So every time that she was going to start something different, we would do something again for that particular purpose. Although I thought that, to a certain extent, she had already been given, or we had already installed very much all resources she needed. But it was a little bit of also reassurance for her. So
that's also good for a conscious mind, isn't it, as well?
Exactly. I think that was also part of and that's still a little bit part of the process that we are going through at the moment. Although this time, right now, we spend more time, just talking as sisters than actually doing actual work, because the actual work might be 5 minutes.
That's right.
Yeah, it is. It's like 5 minutes and it's done. But then we're talking for like an hour and a half.
Well, the other part of any sort of support is feeling somebody's there with you, just as a friend or a sister, whatever.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And everybody, I mean, I had been made aware by that friend of mine who went through the same process, that very often people who go through these kind of treatments then suffer from PTSD, because they are extremely, every time that they have to go for an examination, be it a scan or something like that, they're always afraid of what's going to happen next, right? Having to go to the appointment and the result, whatever, right? So there's a usually anxiety, and to some people really PTSD associated with the post-treatment. So in that sense, I'm still there once a week, offering support. So
and does your sister exhibit any of those sort of possible PTSD signals?
No, nothing. No, nothing. So far, nothing whatsoever. And also the other day we were working exactly with that. And she has already gone through a PET scan, because she had to do a PET scan before starting the radiotherapy. And the PET scan came back clean, completely clean.
Very good, yeah.
Completely clean. And the other day we were talking, and I said, you know what? I actually do believe that maybe second, third session at the most, you had already installed pretty much everything. This might be sound extreme, but I do believe in this, that by that third session, she installed something that actually took care of it, because the way she represented it, like a bright white light enveloping whatever it was, and the color that she had given it initially was gone. And I thought to myself, okay, it's gone.
Excellent.
And
Yeah,
from then on,
that's back to submodalities, right? The quality of the representation. In this case, the visual color changes that happen, and they would have happened automatically. Like, it's not like she, well, I'm not sure, but my guess is it's not like she changed it in her mind from the color of the disease to the color of the health.
No, it just, no, it happened. She didn't change it. It happened.
Yeah.
So,
and that gets back to the whole concept of that we work with, that it's, our system is designed to heal as long as we consciously, with our conscious agreement, enable it and allow that to happen. Right? It's interesting. I'm not sure if you ever got with your sister what might have been the original cause of the cancer. Did you get into that at all with her?
Well, you know what, we believe that it's associated to different things. One of them has to do with her work situation, where she has endured quite a bit of stress. It's actually something that she loves. She loves what she does, but the atmosphere is not empowering. It's not beneficial to her health or herself. And then we also found patterns of behavior and limiting belief that very probably were also contributing to the situation, which was the situation where she felt invisible, right? She felt invisible, and she would also, at the same time, make herself invisible. So,
it's like taking yourself out of the place. Yeah,
completely.
It's reminding,
not just the place, life in general. Not just at work as well, and that's where we started. But then the more we start going into different areas of her life, the more we realize that she was doing the same everywhere.
Was a general pattern for her.
Yes.
Yeah. So invisible, or wanting to be invisible, feeling like you're invisible, can have implications of invalidation of some sort.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. Yes.
It's interesting because John Grinder mentioned, I think I mentioned this before, that one of the founders of NLP, that the body, which includes the emotions and the subconscious thought processes, send up messages to the conscious mind called spontaneously occurring signals, SOSs, right? And they can come manifest either as physical diseases or physical pains before they maybe become diseases, or mental turmoil, like monkey mind type stuff, with apologies to the monkeys, or emotional turmoil. And so they're simply messages the body's trying to give us that something needs to be addressed. The thing is, in our culture and mostly in our society, we're not taught how to address that stuff except by trying to switch off the symptoms through medications, suppressive symptoms, or by management strategies, perhaps, rather than resolution strategies. And not only does Grinder say that, and certainly with our work too, I realize that our system has a natural desire to let us know what's going on through the symptomatic signals, these spontaneous occurring signals, and to resolve that. Right? And even with the EDMR process by Frances Shapiro, when she first discovered the lateral eye movements left and right, she used mostly, that seemed to make some changes, but she didn't understand why. And with our process of the broader eye movements, it's simply the left and right, and also the resource states and the other processes we use. And that she also realized the eye movements of themselves were not enough. But she also had to start to incorporate other type of modalities, other type of therapeutic intervention, excuse me. Just going through an immune upgrade system here. But nevertheless, you notice that when the processing happened of whatever these things were signaling about, the processing went to the next step in the process of resolution, towards resolution. Excuse me, I'm just going to switch off the mic. Yeah, so it's interesting. It's interesting that you have that experience with your sister, because you know her quite well, and also the counter examples of the other people being through a similar process, which certainly suggests very, very strongly that what you helped your sister, how you helped your sister support her through this process, impact on the way she experienced it compared to those other people. Now, I guess that's very hard to prove scientifically, unless you had both a longitudinal study and a bigger
sample.
And I guess as more and more of us start working together and talk about this, we'll start developing a bit of a database, if you like, of this work together. Yeah.
To be very honest, it was not like, I have to be honest, but it was not like I knew her that well, actually, because when I left home, she was starting university, right? So she was maybe in a second year, third year university tops. So from then on, I was away, and she grew into the adult that she became, which was not necessarily the teenager that I had known.
Yeah.
And the truth is that as an adult, for some reason, she started to withdraw more and more. It's interesting, actually. And because as a teenager that I knew her, she was very outspoken. She was very extrovert. And suddenly, for some reason, she started becoming less and less the person that I actually knew.
That's interesting.
So, so that's actually quite interesting, because one of the things that very often would puzzle me was what happened to this woman. What happened to her?
The young extroverted teenager. Or
yeah, exactly. That suddenly seems to have disappeared. And when I start working with her, that's when I realized that, yeah, exactly. She was definitely
withdrawn.
Yes.
Disappearing. Interesting to see if that changes now that you've taken through that process.
Absolutely. And it's interesting to see she's very well aware, which she wasn't in the past, and she's aware of many things that she wasn't in the past. But and so she says, so I'm not speaking for her, but based on what she told me, and it kind of, if you are sort of defacing yourself, invalidating yourself, and because of that, you see other people as actually not valuing you. How can you grow, right? How can you be in balance? You're basically denying your existence. So it's one of those things. So
well, we'll see if it'll be interesting to keep sort of in some informal check on whether that changes because the process you're taking through has become more self-aware throughout that process. Yeah,
it's going to be an interesting journey, most definitely.
So it'd be quite an interesting longitudinal study in a sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we'll see.
Agne, anything to contribute at this point? Thoughts going through your mind?
Not really, like considering the fatigue or tiredness or lack of energy. I think still all the answers will be in the body.
Yeah.
And like if you can like ask the being to bring to the awareness, where is the root of it, we'll know. And then digging into those stories, whether it is some past experiences or trauma or whatever, or some connection relationships, I don't know, different things comes up for different.
Yeah, the body doesn't lie, does it? The body, and the body will say no. You know, was that Dr. Marte's book?
About Mate, yeah.
Yeah, it's about that too. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the thing, the trick, I suppose, is what we teach people to start paying attention to all those signals and the different ways they come to us. And some will be physical, I mean, purely physical, and some will be more mental, and some will be more emotional. Most of them will be a mixture of any of those three in any particular way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Interesting. What was that?
Wasn't me.
Was what?
Does anyone have squirrels?
Oh no, no squirrels in the Philippines. We have roosters, and dogs, but no squirrels.
I have it too.
Oh my goodness.
They're currently fighting.
Are they mating or fighting?
Fighting.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, so what I was going to say is that from our work point of view, there's a lot of ways that we can address the lack of energy, right? So as Agne was saying, for example, like helping the person identify where it might come from, where in the body might be located, and so on and so forth. But sometimes, like I think I've mentioned this before, it can also be interesting to ask people to what representation do they have of that lack of energy, and see how they represent it, and then work with their territory. Because I had that situation once with someone that was feeling depleted, and when I asked how that representation of that depletion was coming up for her, I think she told me, yeah, it's almost like, you know, it's like when in the cell phone you've got the battery running out. So it was really interesting. Then we worked with that.
So okay, so like battery level sort of thing.
Yeah. So that was actually very interesting, and it changed. So that can also be something that can be done.
Yeah, it's very interesting. This was I heard a story many years ago before I discovered NLP, where they discovered a young man had been diagnosed with cancer, and he got over it. He resolved it. He might have had some medical treatment, but his mental way of doing it was he played, in those days there was a computer game, very, very basic one in those days, called Pacman. That's right, Pacman would go around and chew up all these little things in the pathways. And he had Pacman going around and eating up all the cancer cells all around, different types, and all right through his body. And sure enough, over time, the cancer cells disappeared out of his body. So that representation, and that brings us back again to my general concept overall, that the consciousness, the thought, or the nature or the quality of the conscious thoughts and the subconscious ones determine the quality of our health and the health of our mind, body, and emotions. And we, by conscious intent, can choose to, and he did this very clearly consciously, to set this process in motion where this Pacman went right through his body and did all this stuff. What we're doing is encouraging the conscious mind to invite not just the conscious mind to make it up for the unconscious, all-knowing self to do what needs to happen. Right? Whichever processes work for that particular person. Fascinating. Fascinating.
True. I mean, in NLP, even in NLP, they do work with similar ideas, right? And so although I do believe that very often, you know, it's a little bit more directive than the kind of work that we do. And it might work for some people, it might not work for other people, for example. Not what we do, the directive approach. So,
well, when we're being directive, that's why NLP builds into their process being aware of any ecological incongruencies or objections that might come up. So that because they realize that if you're directing a person who something that doesn't match their ecology, their internal ecology, there'll be objections and resistances happen. So that's why they bring that up, to make sure that that's there. Whereas in our process, we don't generally have to be concerned about that. They might come up, but they'll just be another message, SOS come up, say, no, that this needs to happen first, or no, we need to go here first, or something like that. Because it's the unconscious, the deep unconscious self that's guiding the process, as opposed to being directed by a conscious external coach or a practitioner. Yeah.
it's interesting because recently I attended a workshop, if I can call it that, by a coach that has he works with many different tools. One of them is NLP, and he was using, for example, the switch pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And I was listening to the pattern, and I was going like, it doesn't work. Like for me, it wasn't working. And however, there were people that were saying, oh, such a lovely process. And I was going like, take my hat off, because for me, it didn't do anything. And I don't want to diminish it, but no. That's exactly the situation that I had with NLP before. It was the fact that it didn't have a deep, let alone lasting effect with me. And mostly if I wanted to apply it to myself. Right. It wasn't, for me, it didn't work. Which, for example, with QH, I keep working, with myself.
Well, that's the purpose of QH, is to enable.
Exactly, but that's the beautiful thing. Yeah, that's the beautiful thing. There's only sometimes those situations where I'm really, really frazzled, where I can't really access my own skill. It happens, but I really have to be really at a loss, so to speak.
Well, we all need support sometimes, like the other day.
Yes, sometimes, yes, absolutely.
The other day, the last few days, I was going through quite a major immune system upgrade with quite a significant head cold. And I actually called on Agne to give me a support, which she did, but she did a great process. And from the moment of that process, it started to accelerate the clearing up and resolution process. So there's still a little bit of lingering now, but overall, I'm compared to back at 45% when I called her, I'm up to about 90% now in terms of the battery. Right. So yeah, sometimes we all need a bit of support, because when the biochemistry gets a bit turbulated by whatever's going on, which can include either emotionally or physically or biochemically or whatever, then sometimes we need that support from somebody who understands the processes, whatever they are, that are required to enable the journey to go. And Agne took me through that very, very beautifully, very well. So it's good.
I agree. And there's always those moments where an outside, it's like the third position that we were talking yesterday, right? Sometimes it helps, because sometimes, whether we like it or not, it's like when you've got someone looking from the outside in, it can offer a different perspective.
Absolutely.
Right? Because you could fall into your own traps of your blind spots, which for some reason are there, right? Yeah. So that's where I think that the external help can be so useful, because it takes your conscious mind also away from the process, right? Because when I'm sometimes in certain situations in face of a challenge, right, where I'm focusing maybe on some particular obstacle or whatever it might be, right, I might have actually the trouble of detaching. I actually very often of late kind of put myself on a higher on a higher level looking down.
That's the third position. Yeah, that's right.
Exactly. And whereas in the past I couldn't do it, these days it works. But there are always those moments where I think, okay, an external intervention is probably very, very effective in the sense.
But it's interesting to note that you mentioned that you're becoming more third position capable, if you like, almost automatically sometimes. Right? Yeah, it's
Very
interesting.
much so.
I don't know who said this, but I think it was Einstein. Not sure.
Yes.
Said it,
If you're going.
Someone said that the people who are really the smartest people are the ones who can experience the process for themselves as a first position, can also step into the other person's shoes and experience from their position, so they get some sense of what it's like for the person they're communicating with, and they can also step back and observe the interaction as a third position observer. So you get different, and the neurology of the brain makes different connections from those different positions. So that gives you much more flexibility than how you're going to, gives you more information about how to address the particular issue the discussion or interaction might be about. Yeah.
And what I can say is that these days I do realize that because I'm a highly sensitive person and an empath, it's very, it can be challenging for me to detach, right? Because I see myself in the other people, whatever it might be, whether they're suffering or something. As a coach, it doesn't happen for some particular reason. Naturally, it doesn't.
It's because you go in a different state. When you're working, you go in a different state. Yeah.
That's actually very interesting. But when it was me going through some processes, for example, where I was being asked to go into a third position, I couldn't. I honestly couldn't.
But there you're being directed in that particular.
Probably.
Or
exactly.
when you're asked to do something, that's a direction as opposed to a facilitation. That's the difference.
And it was extremely difficult, whether it was when I was dealing with a situation that had to do with someone else, but somehow I would see myself in that position and then take myself away from seeing myself as the person was extremely difficult.
Yeah.
You know? So I could come to the end and people could offer me some sort of interpretation of what was happening, and I could say, yeah, really, I'm not that person. But that's about what would happen. I would say it, but I would still feel like the other person. So.
Yeah. Well, it's a skill that it's like you know, when say you watch some of these good NLP practitioners like John Overdorf or some of the other really good ones, and Steve Andreas, he's now passed, but when you see some of his really good work, they're just really helping the person develop new pathways in their brain, new way, and there's that new aha sort of thing that happens. And the same with Fritz Perls with his Gestalt psychotherapy. It's like a new aha, a new perspective. Something goes click, it comes in a place. But good questioning, really good questioning, like Dr. What's his name? Marte's inquiry, compassionate inquiry, can help do that to a degree. But talking simply at the conscious mind level is usually not enough. You need to get something to change those subconscious processes and programs that have been set up very much. And that's where the timeline work is so good. Of course, bringing those resource states into the timeline, either from future resources and or current resources and source resources that come from well beyond the personal physiological experience of the physical form. So we probably need to wrap it up there. That's been a great discussion, and thanks to each and both of you for that. So I'll just stop the recording there. Very good, thank you.